So now that I've had time to calm down, I'm going to finish the story. So I am going back to the stairs. I get almost to the stairs, and there was an old telephone that was on the wall. Okay, we're good. So there's a telephone that's on the wall, and the handset had about like a 10. For real? Louis. No. What are you doing? What are you locked in on? What are you doing? I'll tell it tomorrow. It's raining, so I'm going to try to make this. I don't know how bad the noise is in the background, but every year on the 4th of July, my mom would have a party out at our house, and the entire extended family would come over to play games and things like that. Are you going to act normal? All of my family knew about Miss Pike. They've all heard the stories, and some were more scared of her than others. My Aunt Lisa had gone into my bedroom. It's raining, so had gone into my bedroom to change her grandbaby's diaper, and she laid her on the bed, and as she's changing the diaper, she's just like doing what she's supposed to do. She's not really like aware of anything that's happening around her, and then all of a sudden we hear her like scream out, and she comes running into the living room where all of us are at, and she's like, "Oh my God, I think I just heard Miss Pike," and she started crying because apparently someone whispered in her ear, "Aw, isn't she sweet?" So Miss Pike thought the baby was sweet, but it scared the shit out of Aunt Lisa. I was probably about 16, 17 in this story, and a friend of mine came over, and we were listening to CDs and sitting in my room, like in the floor, and I'm talking to her, and she just kind of like looks at me, and she's leaned over with her hand like this on the floor, and she just gets really still, and like all the color drains from her face, and I just look at her, I'm like, what happened? And she said, "Somebody just stepped beside my hand." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, it feels like somebody is standing beside my hand, like the carpet is like giving in, but like I felt it give in. And so I look around, and I'm like looking at her hand, and I'm like, "I can't tell anything." And she's like, "No, somebody's standing there." And I'm like, "Well, maybe you just think that. Maybe you just think somebody's standing there." So she sets up, and she was wearing one of those like bucket hats, and they're back in style, but they were really in style back then. And so they come down far, right? Like around her eyes like this, and it just like lifts and comes off the back of her head where somebody like pulled it off the back of her head. And she just, big tear, starts crying. And she's like, "Why did that just happen?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm like, you're fine." And she's like, "It's the middle of the day. Miss Pike just took my hat off in the middle of the day." So she wanted to leave then, so we were finished listening to CDs. Carter's my youngest, and we had gone out to my mom's to visit while my oldest was at school. So, Louie, don't cry. No, you can't have the pizza. It'll make your belly hurt. So one day he was like 2, maybe, if even. We were downstairs playing in the basement. My mom had a whole area set up. Like I said before, it was the basement, but we called it the downstairs because it had been renovated. So I was down there with him. My mom was upstairs, and he said that he wanted something to drink. So I ran up there to get him a drink really quick, get his cup. And when I was coming back down, right before I got to him, he screamed out really loud, like screamed out. And then when I get to him around the corner, he's like shaking and he's like crying, he's pointing, and he's like, she scared me. Nobody was down there. My mom heard him scream, so she comes running down there too, and she's like, what happened? We thought he was hurt or something. I was like, what do you mean? Who scared you? And he was like, that woman scared me. I don't think she meant to do it. I'm going to say that. I really don't. Weird that my phone just adjusted while I was telling that. But anyway, I do not think she meant to do it. So we go back upstairs and we're trying to get him to calm down. And he's like, I want to go home. I want to get in my bed. I want to hide under my covers. He was like terrified. He was really scared. So we go home, and then cut to like 2 weeks later. He's downstairs again with his brother and they're playing. And then he comes upstairs. Both of them do for a little bit. And then Carter went back downstairs by himself he was maybe down there 10 minutes, if even at that. So then my mom goes down to check on him, and she asked me if I covered him up. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, he's asleep and he's been tucked in. So he had a blanket down there, and the blanket had been pulled up over him and then folded back down. Like if you'd made a bed, it was folded over. There's no way he could have done it. His little arms were underneath it and everything. So it kind of scared my mom so much that she took a picture of it, and I'll have to find the picture, but I mean, it's just him laying in the floor covered up with a blanket. But I think she felt bad that she scared him, so she tucked him in when he fell asleep next time we were out there.
What?
Do you think she did it on purpose?
No, I don't even remember it.
He doesn't remember any of it. So this is a really good question. And I am so used to everyone around me knowing the story of Miss Pike, I forget to tell that part sometimes, I guess. So my mom and dad actually knew her before she passed away. She was my dad's best friend's mom. So when my dad was younger and he would go over to their house and stuff, he was like, if you ever sell this house, I love it. I would love to buy it. And my dad's friend, Butch, that was his name, his parents were like, well, we love this place. We're never going to leave here. So my dad just kind of forgot about it. Well, then fast forward years later, they decided that they needed to move because Miss Pike was having a lot of trouble going up and down the stairs to go to the laundry room. So they told their son to reach out to my dad to see if he still wanted it. My dad was like, yes, definitely, I do want the house. So we went with him and went to look at the house, and my mom wanted to tour the house a little bit better. So I stayed with Miss Pike in the living room, and she was talking to me. She was really nice, and she told me that if she could stay in the house forever, she would. And she meant that. Well, then when stuff started happening in our house after she passed away like 2 months, I think, after we bought the house. My dad told Butch, he was like, I don't want to freak you out or anything, but Tammy thinks that the house is haunted by your mom. And he said, well, I was going to say something, but I didn't want to scare you guys, but things have been happening at my house too. Well, then they figured out that when activity was low at our house, she was at his house. So then it became a thing of like, whose house is she at? So then whenever he would come and visit my dad, because he lived kind of far away, stuff would really kick up at our house. Or like we would get a message on the answering machine. We didn't have voicemails back then, but he would leave a message being like, hey, just letting you guys know that mom's here now. And she would be gone for like 2 weeks, and she'd come back to us, and it was just like a thing. And that's just how it always was. Well, since then, Butch has since passed away, and her husband died not too long after she did, and stuff started happening after he died too, but that stuff's kind of scarier, and we could tell the difference between her and him, and I will tell one of his stories too soon. This house here is Federal Hall. It's now known as my old Kentucky home. It's in Bardstown, Kentucky. It's so hard to talk without my hands, but my mom and I love historic homes and any kind of history type things. So we decided to take my niece on fall break one year. I think she was like 8 or 9, to go tour this place, okay? Now, Rachel, I've talked about her, I think, a couple of times in other videos, but she is even more in tune with spirits than I am, right? So immediately when we get there, she does this thing where she's like, where she's just uncomfortable, because I don't know if you have ever felt a spirit or been able to be around ghosts to where you know what it feels like, but it's an immediate, like, almost like anxiety, like a tightening in your chest. So I think that's why she always stood like this, because it hurts. It physically hurts. The house was built in 1818 by enslaved servants and enslaved carpenters, right? So red flag number 1. So it was built by John Rowan Sr. Him and his wife lived there. Everything was going great until, boom, 1833, cholera hits the house. So we step into the house. The tour guide's like, this is the hallway, this is the dining room. Like, you couldn't go into the rooms, which I hate that. When you go to a historic home and you just have to look in through the door, hate that. Poor thing though, she was trying her best, so she's like, this is the dining room. The family had a party one night. Cholera unfortunately hit the home, and by the next morning, 8 enslaved servants and 8 family members had passed away. Now, if you know anything about cholera, it is not a pleasant death. It is spent on the chamber pot, if that tells you anything. So already, like, boom, doom and despair, fun tour, right? So we go upstairs, and that's where all the bedrooms are at, right? That's where they tell us that in 1841, my hands, oh my gosh, in 1841, that there was a fire on the 3rd floor, that lightning hit the house and destroyed the 3rd floor. So he had to pay a carpenter this time to fix it, but he had very strict orders that it had to be exactly like it was before the fire. Okay, now in 1843, John Rowan Sr.'s son, John Rowan Jr., this guy, such a handsome man, him and his wife get the home. Well, he gets the home, but his wife lives there with him. Women couldn't be on the lease back then. Anyway, even though she's not on any of the paperwork, let me show you what Miss Rebecca looks like. This is her. She had 10 children by, let me check the year, 1855, right? So they're showing us the bedroom and telling us all about John Jr.'s 10 children, and one night how he decided to be a good dad and help Rebecca take care of one of them. And he sat down on the windowsill, right? The open windowsill, and decided to just close his eyes for a minute, and he fell asleep, fell out backwards, broke his neck, and so now we've heard about cholera and falling out of windows, and you're like, great, okay? But the silver lining was the whole time we could smell this amazing fried chicken and green beans and all the other good stuff like cornbread, things like that. Everything smelled amazing, like true Southern food, right? So we weren't the only ones that could smell it. Everybody else on the tour started asking, like, you guys smell that? Like, what's that smell? So the tour guide said, well, we have a lot of weddings here on the estate, so it's probably catered, probably like a catered meal. So Rachel keeps pulling on my shirt, and she's like, Aunt TT, I want that chicken. I want that chicken. I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll get some. So after the tour, we go back up to the ticket office thing. It was like a whole building. And I go into the gift shop, and I ask the young guy that's working there, like, where's that chicken being catered from? Like, we can smell this amazing food. Like, who's doing the catering for the event today? So he looks at me and he said, there's no event today. So I'm like, oh, you're young. You probably don't know, but clearly we can all smell chicken. Like, there's some kind of event somewhere. We would just like to know who's doing it so we could maybe go to that restaurant and eat before we go home. He's adamant, no event. So about the time another woman walks up that was on the tour, she asks the same question. I look at her, she looks at me. I'm like, I don't think he knows. And so he can tell that we don't believe him. So he's like, hang on a minute. And he goes and gets one of the supervisors. And the supervisor comes. She's like older. She's not an old lady, but she's older than him. And she asks, like, what she could help us with. And we tell her about the smells and the chicken and all this stuff. And she just, like, closes her eyes and she said, that's ghost chicken. I'm like, ghost chicken? Like, what are you talking about, lady? She said, yeah, she said the enslaved cook that worked here was known for having like the most amazing Southern fried chicken and mashed potatoes and cornbread, and she was like known around the county for it. She said, unfortunately, what you are smelling is ghost chicken. So immediately Rachel starts crying because she wants that chicken, right? And she leans over to Rachel and she's like, no, honey, it's so sad. She said, that I've been here 10 years and I have to smell that ghost chicken all the time. And it's horrible because I want it so bad and I can never have it. So everyone that works there has to deal with stories of death by diarrhea and falling out of windows, and then suffer from smelling this most amazing ghost chicken that they can never have. But I do highly recommend, even though you have to hear all about, you know, spending your final hours on a chamber pot and falling from a window and having to raise 10 children by yourself, run to my old Kentucky home and see if you can smell the ghost chicken. Because I'm telling y'all, that chicken, delicious. I know it had to be delicious. It smelled delicious anyway. I got an idea. Mississippi Queen, why don't you go to my old Kentucky home and see if you can smell the ghost chicken and then figure out what she did to make it so good. And oh my gosh, if you can figure that out, we could be rich. I say we, like I had a hand in it, but like I'm the one that told you to go, right? So I'm just kidding. You can have all the money if you figure it out. Just let me have some of the chicken. Everyone loves the ghost stories that I've been telling so much, so I wanted to tell this other one that took place at my new house after I'd already gotten married, and it's kind of complicated. When I married my first husband, we moved into a home that we knew a child had passed away in. Tragically, the child was 15. He passed away in the bathroom from a heart condition, and it was very sad because we all knew him, and he was friends with my uncle. My uncle's only 5 years older than me, so we're from a small town. Everybody knew him. It was very tragic. Now, he had been gone for about 10 years before they sold the house, but I wanted to go in and make sure I didn't get any kind of like vibes or anything. Like I wanted to make sure I wasn't scared, I guess is the word. Like I wouldn't be scared of him, but I just didn't, after living in a haunted house, I didn't want to move into another haunted house, if that makes sense. But it was fine, no vibes at all. Everything goes on great. Well, we lived there for 3 years before we had our firstborn, Austin, and what the hell? Anyway, so Austin was very advanced, and I know a lot of people say that about their kids, but he was talking in full sentences by the time he was 9 months old, like, I swear it. And then so by the time he was like 2 or 3, he knew like all of his shapes, like hexagon and octagon and things like that, like, and would talk to you like he was a grown ass man. Okay, so I hear him in his room one day. He's 3, and I hear him playing, and he's laughing and he's talking, but he loved to talk, so that wasn't anything new. But then I hear him say, "What?" And then a man said something. So I take off running into his room expecting to see some kind of man or something in there, but no one was there. So I asked him who he was talking to, and he said, "Newman." And I said, "Who's Newman?" He's like, "He's my friend, but you scared him, so he left." So I thought, okay, he's got an active imagination. It's just like an imaginary friend or something like that. Well, this goes on for a long time of him talking to Newman, but I never heard the voice again. So I thought, okay, maybe I just imagined that. But I would hear him say things like, "Oh, well, that's a rectangle, that's a triangle." And then he'd say, "Oh, I know, I am smart. I'm very smart." So he's having like this conversation with Newman, right? Every day. He was telling my mom about Newman, about his friend Newman, blah, blah, blah. And so he told me one time, he's like, "You know Newman? You know who he is?" And I said, "Yeah, I know, you talk to him all the time." And he said, "No, you know him. You know who Newman is." Well, I didn't know any Newmans at all, so I had no idea what he was talking about. So then one day I finally decided to print off a bunch of photos I had on my camera, because back then you just took digital pictures. This was like 2004. And you would keep them forever and then finally print them out. Well, I'd printed out probably like 6 months worth of photos, and I'm just laying them down, and Austin's sitting in my lap, and he goes, "Hey," and jerks a picture up, and he goes, "It's Newman." So I couldn't see the picture. So I'm looking at him, and I said, "Newman, your friend?" And he said, "Yeah, Newman that plays with me in my room." So I asked him if I could see the photo, and he turns it around, and it's his great-grandfather that had passed away 6 months prior to that. I said, "This is Newman? This is who you're calling Newman?" And he said, "This is Newman." I said, "No, honey, this is Mac. This is Granddaddy Mac." And he said, "I know." He said, "But he said not to call him Mac anymore. He's a new man now, so he wants me to call him Newman." When I tell you, the color drained out of my face. And I said, "Austin, what did you just say?" And he said, "He's a new man now, Mom, so we call him Newman now." It was very comforting, but I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So then I start thinking back to the conversations and stuff that Austin had had with him, and about him saying things like, "Oh, I know, I am smart." And when Mac was alive, we would go over and visit with him every weekend because they had moved down to live with my husband at the time's parents. So he would sit and watch Austin play all day while we would be there, and he would say things like, he is so smart, he's the smartest kid I've ever seen, like I've never seen a kid that can talk like this or do things like this, he's so smart. And then all the conversations that he would have with Austin, that Newman would have with Austin, would be Austin saying things like, oh, I know I am smart, I'm very smart. So he was still telling him that after he'd passed, and it was just, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So this goes on for about 2 or 3 more months, and then Austin comes to me one day, and he's so upset. And I'm like, what's the matter? And he said, Newman told me that he had to leave. And I said, he had to leave? Where's he going? And he said, he told me that he loved me and that he would come see me sometimes, but I wouldn't see him anymore, and he had to go back to the happy place. And I'm going to cry talking about it. It still makes me cry. But, so that happened. So we know Miss Pike loves trains, right? She used to play with my brother's train. She liked to blow the whistle, things like that. So we've since grown up, moved out. My mom calls me one day and she's doing that like panic, quiet whisper where you're like, oh my gosh, guess what happened? So immediately I'm like, tell me what happened. So she said she's in the back part of the house cleaning, and I need to draw out a layout of the house. I feel like things would make a lot more sense if you could see how the house was laid out. But anyway, so she's at the top of the stairs. The toys and stuff are all on the bottom of the stairs. And she hears a train whistle blow. But not just like any train whistle. It's one of those like Johnny Cash wooden train whistles that have the big square thing that you have to put like your whole mouth on and blow with everything you have just to make it go like, hoo, hoo, you know, like real quiet. I know, that was a pretty good train. Okay, anyway. So she hears the train whistle blow, but loud, like louder than like if like a person was doing it. So she stops. It stops her in her tracks. And she thought, okay, maybe I'm just making this up in my head. Well, it did it like 4 or 5 more times. So she goes downstairs finally after she gets the courage up to go and see what's going on with it. And the train whistle is just laying in front of the books, like on the bookcase, just laying there. So my mom's like, I went down there and the train whistle's just laying there. She blew the train whistle. I don't like that. I was like, tell her to quit. Just tell her to quit blowing the whistle. Like, you don't want to hear it. My mom's like, I'm not giving her attitude. I said, put her on speaker. I'll do it. I don't live there anymore. So I told her, quit blowing that whistle, girl. You're scaring Mom. So she quit.